Sorry. Oh, thank you for whoever did that. Caitlin and I share personality types that leave us dissatisfied with the status quo and leads us to seek improvement for both ourselves and life in the workplace by being as innovative as possible and constantly striving to improve. So I think this goes right in hand with what Caitlin's presenting today. Before I hand over the mic though, Caitlin shared a really cool fact that I feel like many of you might not know. She originally comes from Nashville and she worked, yes, you guessed it, in the music industry. And she did design for a label and did all the merch and all the gamut of design for this label. And I think that is just such a cool fact. And she continues with her passion in the music industry, where she lives now in Richmond. She creates a live music calendar monthly, free for her community. So without further ado, here comes the sizzle, Caitlin.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, this is exciting, you guys. I don't even know how to feel. I'm just like excited and giddy. Yeah, like Lauren said, I am an art director here for design. I have a background in print and I started in the music industry, but really fell in love with kind of the connection between a business and their audience and creating and using visual communication to really like make that connection authentic and thrive. So this like journey in Carnegie has felt really awesome and authentic to me because I get to work on those connections and build them authentically for our institutions. So that is, yeah, just my background. Like Lauren said, I'm the innovative and conceptual searcher. So yeah, this topic to me is really interesting and inspiring. I love innovation. I love challenging things. And I'm very like a conceptual thinker. It's actually harder for me to think in like concrete terms. And then I'm always like I'm seeking new experiences. I'm seeking new solutions. I want to like try and do and see everything. You can see here, I tried bangs and I've actually tried bangs several times and I love them. It's just the upkeep that I can't deal with. So that is me in a nutshell. But we've got kind of a big topic to cover today. It is the art of innovative thinking and collaborative brainstorming in the workplace. And it's a lot to cover in a small amount of time. So let's dive in. Starting with today's goal is just to improve and enhance your innovative thinking and collaborative brainstorming skills. You can kind of think of innovative thinking and collaborative brainstorming as like two different topics, and they kind of are. But for our purposes today, we're going to talk about collaboration and brainstorming under the methodologies of innovative thinking. So what I hope you can take away from this meeting today is really just a technique or a mindset or a skill or something to apply to either your process or just your day-to-day to maybe like help you ideate more effectively, maybe innovate on a process, maybe just inspire you to look at a problem differently. So hopefully you can take something from it. And without further ado, let's just dive into the agenda. So we're going to start today by talking a little bit about innovative thinking. Then we're going to move to collaborative brainstorming. Then we're going to talk about applying some of the techniques that we discussed. And then hopefully we'll have a little time for Q&A. So to make that happen, let's just keep rolling right into innovative thinking. Okay, so innovative thinking, I'm not going to like sit here and talk at you about what that is. We all know innovative thinking refers to the ability to generate new and original ideas and solutions. Really, these are just examples here on the right that I've pulled in of innovative thinking, of successful innovative thinking done across industries by different companies, whether it's a groundbreaking product, whether it's an original approach to a problem, whether it's a unique work culture. All of these are ways to innovate. But today we're going to focus for our purposes, most relevant to us here at Carnegie. We're going to focus on something called design thinking, which is actually a really well-known methodology. You might have heard of it before. You might have even taken a workshop on it before. It in itself is an innovation. Design thinking was created by the product development industry to answer answer problems that are sort of ill-defined or unknown. So it's just a different approach to solving a problem. And I think we could borrow a lot of it in our day-to-day here at Carnegie, because a lot of our clients face ill-defined problems, and we often have to innovate on solutions for those problems or even help them define the problem itself. And we're an innovative company. We're always thinking about like, okay, what's the best product? What's the best approach? And we have to be able to think innovatively to survive in our industry, which sounds kind of scary, but the good news is we actually do a lot of design thinking already. We just haven't really identified it or like mapped it out or laid it out. So we're just going to talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about today about some of the methodologies of design thinking that we could use, that we do use, and so on. So with that, let's head to the next slide. So the first technique we're going to take from design thinking is taking a human-centered approach. Design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation. Its strength lies in situations where problems are not clearly defined, like I said, or when human factors are significant. So for us here at Carnegie, human factors are incredibly significant, right? We work with humans to solve human problems, to connect with humans. We even we even make the institutions that we work with, we make them human, we give them personality. So we're working in a very like humanistic approach already. So it's only appropriate that we kind of identify that process and think about it systematically just like that and use that to our advantage. So I have this little chart here down below just for my visual thinkers out there like myself. This is just to show that traditional thinking is one way and design thinking is a different way. Traditional thinking is very important, very useful, should not be forgotten, but it's very different. It's a different approach. It basically means there's one correct answer. Design thinking is there are infinite possibilities. There's infinite ways to get to that answer, and that answer may not even be a correct answer. It might just be the best answer we can find at the moment. So there's just a lot more fluidity. There's a lot more flexibility in design thinking, which just really lends itself to our types of problems that we deal with here for our clients. So let's move into the next slide, which is using a non-linear framework. Design thinking is all about this non-linear framework. It's still very structured, but and it's made of these 5 phases, but you can jump around to phases. So there's empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and implement. You have a starting point, you have a finish point, you have steps in between, but you might have to revisit. You're never done with one step. You always can include more factors, can question an original idea that might have come up. Challenge something, discuss something. You're always adding information and refining the process. So for today's purposes, we're going to focus on the first part, the first 3 sort of phases of design thinking. But if you're interested in this methodology, I highly encourage you to go look more into it yourself. I'll have some resources at the end for you to do that as well. But let's jump to the next slide. We're going to start with this empathize and define kind of phase. Redefining the problem is the 3rd technique that we'll talk about, and it exists within this empathize and define stage of the process. So redefining the problem is a hugely valuable tool or step in a process that we can use to our advantage, and we actually already do here. And I'm actually going to illustrate some examples. So I have traditional thinking again over here, design thinking again over here. Traditional thinking, I'll just use a really simple example of a process where traditional thinking is very appropriate. Your car has an issue, you take it to a mechanic, the mechanic analyzes the problem. They say, okay, this part is broken on your car. And based on the mechanics' expertise, knowledge, what they have learned about the problem, they take all of that and they synthesize it and they say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Here's the solution. And they implement it and your car is fixed. There is one correct answer. There's one thing broken, typically. So that's kind of a great example of just traditional thinking. Design thinking, we have to take a completely different approach because there may not be just one problem. There may not be one solution. So instead of trying to identify the exact problem, we start with a how might we. So we look at how might we diagnose the issue here? How might we approach this problem? And then we come together and this is an example actually I want to use of us here at Carnegie that I've seen work really, really well. And it's the relationship between Signature Creative, which is my department, and our client success team. So our client success team goes out and talks to a client and here's their problem or what our client believes their problem to be. They don't always know, right? And then they work with them to say, okay, here's what we're hearing. Here is a product or a solution that we may be able to offer you. So they agree on that and they then come to Signature Creative. And there's often many other steps in the process. Again, why it's important to be fluid and communicative and be able to circle back and all these things. But they'll come to us and say, okay, here's what we've learned. Here is the solution we've provided. How does that look? And we'll say, okay, looks great. Let's get into discovery calls. Let's get to know the client. So then it's our job to get to know the client, to hear their problem again, to challenge them on the problem, to get to know. Actually, some people in the design thinking world call it falling in love with the problem. So you want to really put yourself in the client's shoes and question everything. And once you feel like you know everything, you might learn their problem that they thought they had wasn't actually the problem, or the solution that we originally thought might be the solution isn't actually the solution. So then we circle back with client success and say, okay, I think we need to modify this. And they'll say, great. And then we just are able to better serve our client because we have redefined that problem that we originally stated. So there's not just a clear cut, here's the problem, here's the solution. So that is like a really important part of the design thinking process. And hopefully that's like a big takeaway for today. But that is just scratching the surface of the design thinking methodology. So again, I'll have resources if anyone wants to dive in further on their own. But for now, let's actually pivot. Let's go to the next slide. We're going to start talking about collaborative brainstorming. We're going to go into this ideate phase of design thinking. And I'm going to just share with you guys some techniques for like successful, effective brainstorming. So some practical things you can maybe take away from here. First point I want to make is that practice makes perfect. Like anything else, brainstorming is actually a skill. It is not directly tied to how creative you are. It doesn't mean, you're the best artist if you can brainstorm effectively. It's a skill that you have to practice and develop, especially for us as adults, because we experience so much criticism, so much input all the time that we are constantly criticizing ourselves. We're looking for feedback, we're looking for validation, and it's really hard for us to break out of these mindsets and just be free-flowing creative. And in brainstorming, it's so important to be completely free-flowing. All ideas are good ideas, no bad ideas, like no judgment. That is the sort of culture around brainstorming, or what it should be. So I have a little exercise for us. If you have a pen and paper nearby and want to participate, this is just a fun little thing. We're just going to take 1 minute to do this. You can see this little squiggle on the screen. I want you to draw that and then make it into a picture. Just make it into a picture. We'll put a minute on the clock, or make it into anything, really anything you see. You can do multiple versions. You can just do one. Just have fun with it. And we'll give you a minute. I should have brought in like some elevator music or something, but I don't have that. I could sing, but I don't think anybody wants that. All right, 5 seconds. And that's a minute. Does anyone have anything they want to share? It can be unfinished. It can be an idea of something. Just hold it up to the screen if you want to share. Yes. I love these. You guys, awesome. So fun. Okay, we can hop to the next slide and it'll show you some other examples of drawings of these, and it's just to show these are considered a like someone who is well proficient in brainstorming, who is well practiced, because, and you can kind of gauge how good you are at brainstorming by this exercise, because when you tend to be better at brainstorming, you tend to think of more detail. Like this T-Mobile one is a really great example. It's the what's it called, the balloon guy who's flailing around, and in this little drawing they even included T-Mobile in there, which is just hilarious. So it's like it intrigues you and then it actually makes you laugh, so it's like a kind of fully developed concept with just one little brainstorm. And that's kind of how you know. I will fully admit that I am out of practice brainstorming, so when I did this little exercise I came up with a bug and I couldn't really come up with anything else. So I clearly need to practice. But anyway, that's just a fun thing to show that practice really does make perfect in brainstorming. And let's move on to the next slide here. So this is just another really important tip in terms of effective brainstorming. Constraints are very helpful. I like to think of this as thinking inside the box instead of outside, because it actually can really help to define the problem as much as you can, kind of like we were talking about redefining the problem. You want to work with as many limitations as you know of to really get closer to a better solution. So this is just a visual example here. We've got graphic designers using this one tool that just creates rectangular boxes of lines. And what you can see by these results is the limitation actually really helped you understand each designer's perspective, whether it was like, you know, kind of a modernist cubism perspective or style, or a more photorealistic style, like that still comes out with all these limitations. So it's just a fun example of how that works. But when you're doing brainstorming, just be mindful of what limitations you have and what you can come up with within those limitations. And I think you'll find you'll have even more successful ideas when you do. And for our next little tip, this is going to be actually a style of brainstorming. I'm just going to walk you through it. It's a exercise that, if done correctly and if practiced, should be able to get you a viable solution to your problem in 10 minutes. And it's a collaborative brainstorming exercise. So it's how to make collaborative brainstorming efficient. Because what happens a lot, especially when we like have meetings that are designed to be brainstorming meetings, or we're you know, working on a problem together, no matter what it is. And this does not only apply to creative, this applies to solving any problem. Often we'll get in a room or in a call and we'll just start sharing ideas, right? Back and forth, and we'll start discussing, and that's great. But there's not really structure there. And a lot of times we don't land on, okay, here's the best solution for that problem. Here's what we should pursue. Everyone's just kind of shared ideas. Sometimes it works, but it's not guaranteed to. So this kind of hopefully guarantees a result, but it's going to be like the closest thing I've ever come across that does guarantee. So it's just a simple process. It's called 10 for 10. And it's basically, you start in groups of 10, or you work in groups of 10. If you have less than 10, that's okay. If you have more than 10, you want to do multiple groups. And you have one facilitator in each group. So the first thing you do is you pass out sticky notes to each person, a pad of sticky notes. And then the facilitator will say, okay, here is our problem. Here are our limitations. This is a free-form brainstorm. You have 5 minutes on the clock. Write one idea per sticky, and I'll just note here, if you've ever been on a blitz with Ian Strawn, you've seen a version of this, and it really works. So you state the problem limitations, you put 5 minutes on the clock, and you say, how might we approach solving this problem? So everyone writes one idea per sticky note in 5 minutes, as many as they possibly can, just free for all for 5 minutes. And then at the end of that 5 minutes, the facilitator says, okay, time's up, everybody go through their own stickies. So we're not collaborating yet, we're just working individually. Go through your own stickies and choose your favorite 10 ideas. The ideas, I don't like using the word best because it's really just most interesting, maybe most successful, 10 ideas. You pick those of your own and you put them on a wall. And this can also work digitally if you work in Miro or Figma or some other digital collaborating platform. So you put your 10 best, or it is said best, most successful, most interesting ideas on the wall. And then everyone does. So maybe if you have 10 people, it's 100 ideas up there, which is awesome. And then everyone gets 10 red dots, stickers, or if you're working digital, it's just a red dot that you create. So you get 10 and you can distribute them however you want, but you're voting for the ideas that you find most interesting across all of the stickies. So you can use all your stickies on one if you want, if you think that's the right idea, or you can distribute them however you want, but you get 10. And then the facilitator takes those ideas, nothing is categorized, nothing's organized, you just, go at it. So then at the end of that, the facilitator just finds the highest ranking ideas, organizes them into kind of a system like this where you have your most votes to least votes, but you're aiming to end with 10 stickies. So you only take the 10 most voted, you remove everything else, and then you have the end of this exercise, but the start of your successful discussion. So you've ended with the consensus of the most likely to succeed ideas. So then you can start your discussion. Is this the approach we should take? Is there something, a little lower voted down that might actually solve a problem because XYZ, we haven't considered this. Anyway, that's the discussion that then proceeds. So yeah, the goal is just to end on something that really sparks interest and is believed in by the most amount of people. And that is that exercise. I encourage everyone to try it on their next available brainstorm or even meeting. Just anytime you need to solve a problem, try it out. And let me know, like, get back to me, see what it's like. And with that, I think we can move on. We're actually doing really well on time. I'm really actually impressed. Okay, let's talk about applying some of these techniques really quick. This is just really a summary. I don't want to repeat myself too much. But we talked about human-centered approach to innovation, nonlinear process, and redefining the problem. That's all under design thinking. And then we talked about collaborative brainstorming, and we talked about the points of practice making perfect, the fact that constraints are helpful, and this 10 for 10 exercise. And we'll send out this deck. You can read more into all of this if you want. And on the next slide, I have some resources for everyone. I actually brought in this YouTube channel that I find super helpful in terms of like facilitation, design thinking ideas, brainstorming, all the things. And then if you want to read more about design thinking itself, Interaction Design Foundation is a great resource, as well as Stanford's Introduction to Design Thinking process guide. And then we've got brainstorming techniques from AJ and Smart YouTube channel again. And that is everything. And we have just a few moments for questions if anybody has any. I will open up the floor. Thank you guys again so much for being here.
Hey, Caitlin, I have a question.
Yes,
Is this
clay.
how we're supposed to do it, or are we supposed to ask in chat, or supposed to raise our hands? Sorry.
I don't know that there's a right answer, so I think you're doing great.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask, how do you, when you're feeling stuck and you're working collaboratively, on a brainstorm or in a meeting or something like that, and you get stuck, how do you shake new ideas loose?
So that is where I think I was going to say redefining limitations could also redefine the problem and try to look at it a different way. But I think revisiting limitations and putting more and more limitations, including like, even if they're not even necessary for the problem. I'm going to use a design example because that's what I know. So if we're working on design concepts and we're stuck, let's do an exercise and say, okay, you can only use this color and this typeface. Choose some crazy ones. I don't know. Like you can only use this and this, but you have to express this. So go. And it'll force the matter. It'll force you to come up with something different, come up with something new. That's a design example. I hope that can apply to writing or other issues or problems, but I hope that answers.
Definitely. Thank you. That was awesome.
I don't see any questions in the chat, Caitlin, but do you want to check out the chat? You're getting lots of kudos.
Oh, you guys,
Wonderful
this is
job.
so fun. This is
Who,
awesome.
who would you say is your biggest influence as a leader in the creative design space? Somebody either that you look up to from afar, or maybe somebody that mentored you?
Oh, I'm gonna get all sentimental and I'm gonna say Nathaniel Strimpopoulos. Some of you who have worked here have had the pleasure of working with him. He used to work here, but I actually worked with him in the music industry as well. We're friends. We both lived in Nashville, and he has been like such an inspiration to me. He's so patient and always has like a thoughtful answer or approach, or if he doesn't, he would like go find an answer and come back. Like even days later, I would forget about the question and he'd be like, hey, remember when you asked me this? Like I, looked into it and here's what I think. And I mean, he's just so thoughtful. And I just respond to that really well. So it's inspired me too, to like do my due diligence and look into things and try to mentor. Gosh, if I could only mentor the way he did or does. He just doesn't work here anymore. But yeah, that would be my answer.
A few comments. One, am I the only one that gets a little disappointed when I find an answer to a problem when it's resolved?
No, 100% not. But I don't know. I have a perspective on that there's like never just one answer. So it never feels closed out to me, which sometimes means I'm never satisfied. But I mean, like the subject of math has never made sense to me because math has one answer and that just it doesn't compute. So even when we land on an answer or solution, I am typically like, did we really land on the best answer? Like, let's revisit, and usually there's something else to move on to, so you can't just keep revisiting. But yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm never satisfied.
And last one for this minute that we have left, would you say that limitations help inspire creativity?
1000%. 1000%. Yeah, because often when you work within those limitations, when you're so constrained, like by having to work with one typeface and nothing else to express something, you're then able to come back to the original problem with a more open mind or new ideas. Yeah, hopefully that helps.
And there was one more question from Maddie that we're not going to have time for because I'm supposed to end right on time. But thank you so much, Caitlin, and thank you so much for letting me host you.
Oh, thank you so much, Lauren, and thanks everyone for coming. This is so fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye.